and welcome to Brand and Becoming. I'm Keisha Sheikh, LinkedIn Visibility Partner and Personal Branding Consultant, and I work with founders and senior leaders to build authority, reputation, and commercial growth through visibility. Today's conversation is for anyone responsible for growth, strategy, or competitive advantage. I'm joined by Frans Lytzen, CTO and CISO at NewOrbit. Frans has been building and scaling secure cloud systems since 2006 and helps organizations get the most out of Azure, from cost optimization to security, and now embedding AI practically. Frans, welcome. I'm really looking forward to having you here, and thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me, Kasia. It's a real pleasure. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. Like I said, thank you. And I'm sure a lot of people who do end up watching this, that we have a lot of people that watch on kind of the replay and recording will get a lot of value from it as well, especially with the topic and also what you specialise in. So I suppose for anyone that doesn't know you and maybe has just come across you for the first time, how do you describe what you do and the value that you bring to organisations?
Yeah, so as you said, I'm the CTO of NewOrbit, so we do quite a lot of things for a lot of people, but I'd say the core is we design and build systems that enable organizations to scale. That's really what we do. So I've co-founded this with Sean, my co-founder, back in 2008, and we've been doing it ever since. We are self-described process optimization geeks. So what we do is we work with companies to look at how they're working and how they can then scale, and then we build the custom software to enable them to do that. That's really at the heart of what we do.
Nice. And I think especially now, there's so much that can be done around that. So I'm looking forward to those getting into kind of some of the how and why and kind of tips that you've got. And from kind of the work that I do, but also from speaking to different guests and a lot of people in the industry, there's so much noise around AI right now. And I suppose a lot of it can feel overwhelming for leaders and what to do, what not to do, what it means, and kind of, how to use it. Or, I think there's just so much out there, isn't there, and a lot of different noise. So if a CEO said to you, I suppose, explain AI to me in plain English and tell me why it matters, what would you say to them?
So I'd say AI, the AI we're talking about at the moment, so AI as a concept has been around for a long time, but the current wave is a thing that was invented in 2018. It's actually quite new, but it is a fundamental game changer of how businesses operate. And I think, and I can explain a little bit more about that in a second, but I'm just going to say the key thing to really understand, this isn't just another technology that can do a little bit. It fundamentally changes how your business is able to operate. And I think a lot of people are thinking of this as a technology challenge. It's like, oh, let the IT department handle it. It really isn't. This is change management. This is leadership. It's everybody, especially in the C-suite, are beginners again, and they have to think of it that way. They have to think, look, it might be I have 30 years of experience in how to run a business, but the truth is, in the world of AI, it's just different. That's not hyperbole. I'm very aware of the limitations of AI. It's not magic, but it does fundamentally change how most businesses operate and will be operating. So that's the first part. You asked about sort of what it does. So I think the key thing is that the AI we have today is it enables us to maybe most importantly, automate non-deterministic problems. So traditionally, we've been able to automate deterministic problems. If you can automate a formula, you can automate an algorithm for calculating a loan. What you haven't been able to automate is the stuff that requires some level of understanding of language and human judgment. We're now in a place where we can start to automate those things, and that is a fundamental game changer. And that's why it's so important. There's a whole area of stuff you can now automate you just couldn't before.
Yeah, I think there's so much that can be done with it, and also importance of using it so that you're not left behind. And that's something that I suppose that I want to talk about a little bit more soon, because I think there's a lot of people maybe that are still, a bit unsure, or kind of maybe haven't made a start on things, or they think they should, but they don't know what to do. But then if they don't end up doing it, then they won't end up kind of, keeping up with competition, or they'll get left behind. So I think it's definitely something to bear in mind. I know you kind of touched on it briefly then, but I think many people are treating AI like as a technology upgrade, like you mentioned. But why do you believe it's actually, I suppose, a leadership and change management issue, or kind of where do you, I suppose, what's your thought process on that?
So I think the key is that with AI, when you look at a business, traditional technology, it's been okay. We can, I don't know, automate the scanning and the OCRing of a document, for example, or we can put a bit of optimization in here or there. But because AI can interact more autonomously, can make more judgments, it enables you to rethink how you think about your business fundamentally, and sometimes that's the core value proposition itself. You might have, I don't know, say an advice business that does some kind of advice around health or finances or something like that, and you would have built up a whole business about, okay, I need to optimize how I can connect the customer with the advisor, for example. But in the world of AI, well, you can probably automate a lot of the advice so that the AI do that. And that fundamentally changes your value proposition. If your value proposition is no longer just about having the humans there and connecting the humans to the customer, it's about embedding the knowledge and the experience you have into AI models and enabling customers to interact with them. And it might mean that if it's always been your barrier to growth has been how many people can you hire and how can you do the admin around that, that can fundamentally change in some cases, not all cases, but that's what I mean. Sometimes it's like, I need to rethink everything rather than just how can I optimize what I already do. It's a little bit like the shift from, from when we got cars from horses. It's a fundamental shift. It enables new things you just couldn't do before.
Yeah. And I think that's it, isn't it? It's enabling businesses to be able to do things that they haven't been able to do before. So it's like, where is the possibility that the AI can take businesses? And there's so much more options out there, isn't there? And so much more option to be creative or to scale or to do different things that maybe they weren't able to do before.
I think that's right. And I think it isn't helped. There's a big, very unhelpful focus, I think, out there, because people are so focused on the generative aspects, get it to write my emails for me, get it to write this letter for me. And I think by and large, without context, AI is actually really poor at that. But that's where all the noise, people are so focused on that, and then they try it and they get disappointed. Whereas I think where AI in most businesses is much more immediately applicable is in reading documents, reading information and making sense of it. So for example, if you have a contract, you get a contract through the door, getting AI to read that contract for you is really easy, and it's really good at it and reading stuff. When you have 20,000 support tickets that you have done over the last year, and you want to know what are our customers actually asking us, getting an AI to go and read through 20,000 support email exchanges and summarizing to you what are people asking about, where are the problems, what do we need to improve in our business. AI is phenomenally good at that, and it's really easy to do. Whereas, as I say, when you say, I needed to write my stuff and output stuff, that's a lot harder to get right. But people are focused on that. Focus on reading. If there's one thing you want to do just to optimize your business right now, find something where you're relying on humans reading a lot of stuff or listening to a lot of recordings. Use AI there. It's easy, and it will really start getting you to help understand how to use this and how to transform your business.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And I suppose, like you said, actually reviewing documents and being able to do that a lot quicker than a human could do it is a really good place to start. Because I do think you are right. A lot of people are using it to maybe write an email or to kind of write something, which again, we still are trying to train it in our own tone of voice or what to say, what not to say. But I think if like reviewing something, and even I suppose, I've used some things like, giving my thoughts or giving my plans, review it, what's your kind of roast of this, what do you think of it? Because sometimes just bouncing ideas of what's already in my head and reviewing what I've already put down is quite a useful thing, rather than getting it to write something. So yeah, that's a really good bit of advice there.
Can I just say, I think you're absolutely hitting the nail on the head there, Kasia. Using it as a conversation partner, when you need to write an email, don't say write an email for me. Say, give me 3 ideas about how I could write this email. This is what you're saying. Have a conversation with you. Use it to spark off. That's really powerful and useful, and much better than write me an email. Because what people forget is that, there's technologies that are changing this now, but by and large, when you say, write this email for me, it's no different to going out on the street right now, grabbing some random stranger who's never met you and say, write an email for me, because the AI doesn't know you and expecting you to do a good job, and it has no context of who you are. And that's what I mean. When you needed to generate context, technically you can solve that, but you have to think. There's a lot of detail about how do I give it context and knowledge and understanding about who I am and what I need and all of that kind of stuff. And that's all doable, but it's not simple, and you have to work at that. Whereas reading is much easier, because all you're saying is read some stuff, give it back to me, and the context is a given.
Yeah, I think that's a really good bit of advice, and it's just learning, isn't it, and getting people within businesses to learn how to use it, how to help with kind of, getting more out of it, rather than, maybe if it's not working for you, these are some areas that you maybe can use it and start to help AI, know who you are and what you're trying to get from it as well.
And I think you're right. It's a learning thing. It's a challenge. And this is a challenge because, I mean, if you're at the top of your business, right? If you're listening to this, you're probably, you're leading. A lot of your identity is tied up in the idea, I know how to do this kind of work. I know this. And the truth is, if you want to get to grips with AI, you're going to have to admit to yourself you are a beginner, and you have to be able to be vulnerable enough with yourself and your organization to say, look, I don't know, and we have to learn together. And that can be very hard, but I think it's essential. And that's because that's what enables you to start experimenting. We all like grown up with this idea that, we need to have a 3-year strategy plan, and we're going to start AI by defining where do we want to be in 3 years. And the truth is, today, you probably don't know enough to be able to figure out how it's going to work. So you've got to realize, yes, you've got to set some strategic goals for sure, but at the same time, understand is learning, understand you've got to experiment your way, find some simple little things to try and do, play with it. Like what you're doing, Kasia, you're using it actively in your job. Do that. Get your C-suite to do that. Get your managers to do that. Learn, experiment with guardrails, with direction, but it's learning. And once you've done some learning, that's when you can start saying, you know what, hang on a minute. If we do this, then we can take the business in this direction. We can do this, this, and that. And you just can't do that until you do the learning.
Yeah, definitely. And where are you already seeing AI create real competitive advantage, and where are companies falling behind, would you say, from your experience?
I think we're seeing it creating obviously in software development itself, it's very huge in that, and that's because it's a field that is uniquely suited to AI, because it's very rules driven at the best of times, but it's also where we're seeing the gaps. I think where I see it with our customers, the kind of things we're working on, is taking labor intensive things that have people reviewing stuff manually. For example, we were, without giving too much detail away, we were working with somebody who, they had something where they were doing recordings of people's conversations, and then they had people manually listening to these things in order to categorize them and do scoring and stuff like that, in order to do feedback kind of thing. And we literally in a few days, we wrote a prototype that could do that via AI. So just take the recordings, transcribe them, and then have the AI give the AI the instructions on how to do that. So rather than a human having to sit there and listen to all of these things, the AI would spit out something that was good enough for the purpose. That kind of thing. I see a lot of it with automated response to, again, it's a difficult subject. Automated response to customer emails is always usually a bad experience. So be very careful there. But helping a human to, so let's say you're doing a triage process, for example, in say healthcare, having the AI pre-read a lot of the stuff can really help. Having an AI helping the customer to answer better. So say you have customers filling in forms for, say, a health referral, for example. Now, that might go to a human to read, and then the human reads it and says, actually, I need some more information, or this isn't clear. You can have an AI in the loop that does that helps the customer before it even gets submitted to say, I'm not sure this is clear. Can you just clarify this a little bit? Can I understand this? And AI can do this really well. So you can sort of reduce errors. You can optimize the flow a little bit. And also quality control is the other thing, because while we still want to rely on the humans doing the right answers, one model we've used a few times is you get the AI to also figure out what it thinks the answer is. And if the AI and the human disagrees, then we say, are you sure? And you might be right. We trust the human, right? But it's just a little, are you absolutely sure? Because the AI disagrees. And if you're sure, human, fine, carry on. But it just helps to catch errors kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's really useful. And I think reviewing, like you said, that it's a huge thing to be able to do, but also asking for what they think as well, and what AI thinks versus human, because then it's a good way to sanity check yourself and kind of AI as well, which is really cool.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting time. Sorry, yes, carry on.
I was just going to ask, where would you see maybe companies, or from your experience, that they're falling behind? Is it kind of maybe not doing those things, or not even starting, or not using it in that kind of way?
That's exactly what I'm seeing. Most companies I talk with, they haven't even started. Some are absolutely far ahead and they're doing a lot, but a lot, because it's such a big thing, it's such a big cliff to try and climb, and they might have done a little bit of experimentation, gotten disappointed because they didn't have the structure and the way of thinking about it. So they're just not even trying, and they're just stuck in this thing where it's not going to affect us. In fact, I have a blog post article literally called "We're Not an AI Company," because I used to hear that so much. We're not an AI company; it doesn't affect us. Trust me, it does.
Yeah.
My wife has a little crafting business. She literally does sewing that she sells. She uses AI in her business, and it helps her. Right? It's just everywhere.
Love that. That's it. I think even any business now will need to use it or should be using it in some way, just to speed things up and kind of make life easier. Really, isn't it? It's why not use it when it's available?
I think it's making it easier. There's optimization, there's cost saving, but I also think it's and that's a big part. Don't get me wrong, and it's a good place to start. But it is also that thing about, is there new ways? Can we come up with new products or new ways of delivering our service in a different way?
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly, by the way, it touches on a related but very different concept, which is there's a generational shift about how people want to interact. People of my generation, we're used to thinking about, well, everybody wants to interact with a person, and that's such a core part of it. But the truth is, if you look at the demographics under about 30 or 40, they prefer not to deal with a human. And this is a bit of a blind spot for people of my generation who sits in most of the C-suites out there. We think that everybody wants a human, and most people actually don't. So, and you combine that with what AI can do, and you start thinking, actually, that changes how a business needs to operate or should operate.
Yeah, I agree. And I suppose it's kind of learning how people want to communicate, or kind of, it may not always be the way that things have always happened, because we're always on our phones now, aren't we? And we're always kind of clicking away. So actually, is that the best? As long as, I suppose, you're giving the information the way that the kind of customer or client wants to consume it, that's the most important thing, isn't it? And being able to support them and kind of have a good service. And so you also get people that want to speak to someone, and I think there should be that kind of escalation to be able to. But so I think for me, I quite like both options, because I think it sometimes can be frustrating not getting the right answer. So it's kind of 100%. Nice to then be able to escalate and speak to a real human. I think for me, that's where it's nice to be able to get quick answers or kind of quick support. But then if you actually need something a bit more, that maybe you need a bit more in depth, or you need a human to speak to, it's always nice to have that option as well.
I couldn't agree more. And that's where a lot of the big companies have gotten burned by that, because they were like, oh, AI is going to take over all of our customers. So there's 5,000 of people, and the results, well, they speak for themselves. It's atrocious right now trying to deal with them. So I agree with you. You need to have that. But I also think it's about being honest and not. The worst thing in the world is when an AI agent pretends to be human.
Yes,
So just don't do that, and don't try and be too cheery and nice. Just be calm and say, look, this is what I can help you with, and if that's not what you need, I'll send it to a human. That, just be a bit more pragmatic and honest, I think, is key.
Definitely. I think maybe before, maybe they kind of pretend to be human, you could maybe get away with it, but I think now everyone's so much smarter to, like, this is not an actual real person that you're speaking, kind of not like a real, because there's only so much, I suppose, even though AI is great, there's only so many kind of different responses they can do. So it's like, I think it's like you said, be calm, be pragmatic, and if AI can't support with that particular query, then offer the option to speak, to somebody, whether it's kind of on the phone or kind of by direct message. So I think just having those options available.
I think that's essential.
So before, I suppose, a company can even talk about AI, what foundations need to be in place for it to succeed, would you say, from your experience?
So I have a saying that before you can automate a process, you actually need a defined process.
Yeah, I love that.
So now, I know that I said about, AI enables you to change your process, but you can't do that until you've learned the basics. So my key thing is to say, look, if you want to use AI today, look at your process and make sure they're actually defined and ideally systemized. So you have a system that can drive the process, because otherwise it's going to be really hard to plug AI in. I think there's two big misunderstandings about AI. But the best way to explain what AI can and can't do is, this is a quote from Andrew Ning, who's one of the really big guys in this space. And he said, think of it as a recent graduate who does not know you and does not know your industry. If you can write down instructions to that person, that human, on what you need them to do, you can probably get an AI to do it today. That's a really good yardstick. But if you can't, an AI ain't going to be able to do it. So that gives you your immediate thing. But that then also means, so if you have an undefined process where you're just doing stuff, and customers call you, trying to put an AI into that it's not going to do a good job, because if you put a human graduate in off the street to do that, they would also fail because they don't know, they don't have 10 years of scar tissue on how to do this stuff, right? So define the process, define the steps, and then look at it. Okay, which ones could I give to a graduate? Give that to an AI. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And I think it all comes back to kind of being able to educate AI and kind of, like you said, that's a really good way of, and I've not actually heard it like that, but almost explain it to a graduate who doesn't know kind of your industry, or doesn't know, what you actually do, being able to break it down, because you can't just expect it to, suddenly know absolutely everything about you. So it's kind of training, but I suppose like you would with a graduate, isn't it? It's all part of the kind of giving them all the information that they need. And then reviewing and kind of making sure it's right.
Exactly right. And that's where we then talk about context and those. And that's where we get into so if the graduate who doesn't know, you then need to be given more context, more learning, for lack of a better word, because it's not really what we do with LLMs. That's when you get into more complicated. That's where the technical solution starts coming in. So again, a lot of people have this idea that we can just do it with Copilot. Now, the Copilot itself is just an application that sits in front of AI. And when you start getting into these more complicated things, that just isn't going to wash. It's not good enough. You need to build your own applications that know how to interact with other systems, put in more information and all that kind of stuff. So again, there's a lot of confusion about what AI is, what's the application at the front, what's actually the AI, and sort of where do you need to build your stuff.
Yeah. And have you got, I suppose, and I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit, but have you got any examples of that type of maybe work that you could give to a graduate? I suppose, again, putting you on the spot, but have you got any examples that you can think of?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I mean, the most simple one is, as I say, you got your 20,000 support emails. In fact, no, I literally did one the other day. So for myself, which was we needed to do a tax report where we had to report on the different projects we had done in the year and all the work we had done for different clients, that kind of thing. And that's about 10,000 tickets in our project tracking system. So I could have got a graduate to come in and I said, look, these are the rules for what this particular taxing is. I need you to go and read these 10,000 tickets and extract the relevant bits of information and put them into some nice reports for me, and And I could have written that down to a graduate, and they absolutely could have done that. But I got an AI to do it instead.
Yeah, amazing.
And it would have taken a human a week or two to do it. It took me 4 hours to do the code and then about an hour to run it.
So good. Yeah, and I think having some practical, things or that you can actually use it for probably will help people, just because sometimes it may not even come into someone's head of actually maybe I could use it for that, or I could use AI for this. I haven't even thought about it. So I think it's just almost experimenting with it. And like you said, Frans, if you could give it to a graduate or someone who had not really much experience, try give it to AI. Obviously review it, don't just accept what it's come back with, make sure that it is what you wanted, and if not, tweak it or advise it like you would with a graduate. Maybe this is all great, but maybe this part wasn't quite right. Can you refine it or amend it?
And that's where you get into then building what we call agentic systems, where you have multiple AIs working together. So you have a writer AI, researcher AI, an editor AI, a process manager AI, and they start talking together. And that's again where you're into building systems, but that's where it gets interesting, and you can start doing very sophisticated stuff. As you said, because the quality control, because you can also get AI to do the first part of the quality control, and you actually end up with these systems where you get two AIs pinging back and forth until they're both happy, and only then does it go to a human, and that saves time. So we did an example of that recently, where to do with building training programs for certain highly regulated scenarios, where essentially what you have to do is break down a job into 1,000 constituent parts and then build a training program to say, I need to make sure this person is trained on each of these 1,000 components, which is a complicated piece. Now, the software our client, they have that built the software, but the breakdown is an entirely human job. And it involves basically taking thick manuals and reading through them and trying to figure out, battery change. Okay, that's the thing that have to be trained on. Oh, this button has been jammed. That's something they have to be trained on. So we could then build some AI that starts reading all of that and comes up with a suggestion of things. But the key thing is then the next thing that happens is that goes to a human and they then vet that. But actually we then put in a second AI to vet the list and refine the list before it went to the human. So we end up sort of multi-stages there. So that's,
Amazing.
again, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and I suppose it's all saving time, isn't it? But also it's kind of being able to give a quality, service and quality, I suppose, experience as well. So if you've got them both talking to each other before it comes to a human, even better, because it's less for a human to do. Although it is really good still to have that human element to make sure everything is all right. If you can get those two working together, that's amazing.
Yeah, but it is, yeah, exactly. But also, I mean, another thing we came up with there was to say, okay, so we've done all of this work. Now we have all of these things. Now what would be nice is if somebody could then read through all of the things we have found and then read through all of the manuals and find the pages that are not referenced anywhere. Mm-hmm. But again, that's hard if it's a 1,000-page manual. So again, get an AI to do that and just flag up to a human, look, these 20 pages haven't been referenced over here. That might be fine. They might just be not important stuff. But again, you can automate those kind of things. So thinking multi-step, sort of breaking things down into pipelines and thinking quality control and having loops. There's a bunch of other stuff. You can even automate quality control of AI systems and stuff, which again uses AI to check the AI's homework. And it feels a bit like Inception. There's a lot of Inception work going on, in AI work.
But it's also smart, isn't it? And I think it's just opening your eyes to the possibility and the opportunity that is out there, and it's exciting as well, isn't it? Like there's so much that can be done. I suppose now if it's in your head, more than likely you can make it work a lot maybe quicker, but also maybe more efficient, and just so much more that can be done quicker and I suppose more optimized as well, like you say.
You can, and then I think that there's the next level up. So we talked about the getting into read stuff and summarize things. I think the next level up from that, even before you start talking about generating stuff, is a lot of organizations have a lot of organizational knowledge, and that's really, in a lot of cases, is really the value of the business, is the knowledge and understanding you have from the thousands of things you've done in the past. Now, if that's written down, it isn't always, but if it is written down, then you can start getting AIs to tap into that automatically. So a very simple example of that is, I'm just going to use it because so many people have come across it. When you get these security or compliance questionnaires to your business, so trying to land some new business, right?
Yeah.
And then this spreadsheet arrives with 200 questions on it, like, do you have locks on your windows? And all of those kind of things, right? And they are utterly tedious because it's essentially the same questions everybody asks, but they're always worded differently. So in the past, trying to come up with a way of standardizing that is really hard. However, with AI, we can do something called semantic search. So we can basically say, look, here's another 100 of these we've done in the past. And then when we get the new one, and we can take each question and we can say, semantically, can you go and find some similar questions from the past? Even if they use completely different words, if they have roughly the same meaning, we can find them and pick them out and say, oh yeah, we've answered something like that 5 times before, pick out those answers and then come up with a new answer based on those answers a human has given in the past to this new question over here.
Yeah.
And that's sort of really utilizing all of that organizational knowledge you have. And as an aside, by the way, that's one of the reasons at the moment I'm thinking a lot about how to capture organizational knowledge in a way that an AI can read, because a lot of what we have in organization is sort of verbal and sort of that verbal tradition there. And that's great. But even if you do nothing else, you should start today thinking about, how do I capture those insights, those ideas, those throwaway comments somewhere? And I actually think that one of the answers is some internal social media stuff where you can just post stuff like you would on Facebook, some random stuff, just so it's captured. And then AI can read it and use it next time.
Yeah, that's really good advice as well. And I think the whole capturing thing is really important. And even, I suppose, slightly different, but slightly the same, even things like AI note takers, like I use definitely. One and I absolutely love it, because the thing of me maybe previously handwrite, I'll still love a notebook, but don't get me wrong, but handwriting all the notes and kind of trying to capture it whilst in a meeting. Now I can be more engaged in the meeting, so I can actually pay attention to the person I'm talking to. But 2, I know that everything's captured, whereas when you're trying to write notes yourself really quickly, you end up missing things, don't you? So for me, I always kind of use an AI note taker. Obviously, I generally will ask someone that I'm meeting if they're happy for the note taker to be in there, which generally they are now. But I think it's just so good then for like follow-up meetings or kind of capturing what was discussed, actions. So I use it all the time for meetings that I'm having.
I agree, and that's something we have completely standardized now. We always record meetings, and it is amazing when you go back to a meeting you were in 2 weeks ago and you say, oh, by the way, I think the customer mentioned something about what they're doing in Mexico. Can you just summarize it? And it just goes and finds it. And
So
you could read the transcript yourself, you can listen to it, but this happens in seconds.
yeah.
I would say, though, I mean, and this is one of those things where I think it's important to understand what AI note takers are good for. And they are really good for capturing that, being a source of reference material and stuff. But at the same time, depending on what you're doing, it's also worth remembering that the act of using handwriting stimulates different parts of your brain. So I always make handwritten notes in meetings as well as having the recording. And that's just because I know it activates certain parts of my brain that can work in a different way than if I just rely on the note taking. But I think they just
that's interesting. Because I have both as well, and I think I always have my notebook there and then the note taker. What does, I suppose you maybe know more than me on this topic, but what does it stimulate, handwriting notes?
So firstly, I very rarely read my handwritten notes these days because the AI note taker, but the process of writing, it enables, it does something in your brain. I can't remember all of the details, but essentially it's about making different connections and different creative leaps. You can even show, and studies have shown this, that even typing notes on a keyboard doesn't give you the same feedback as writing with a pen. Now, I write on a digital pen, but it doesn't really matter. It's the process. If you're doing creative things, if you're designing things or coming up with, I don't know, ideas for sessions like this or something like that, that act of handwriting, it's the creative part of your brain that gets more engaged for some reason.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because I think, I always like I say, still write some notes on my actual book, but I think it's on my notebook. But I think having the note takers, I think they're both good, aren't they? It's important to have both, and I think I've just noticed that I can be, I suppose, more engaged because I know that even if I don't write that particular thing down, I can always go back and look at what we discussed, but also just make sure that I'm doing the correct follow-up so that I'm getting the right information across. So it's relevant for everyone and saving time from having another meeting to discuss the similar things where actually I'll just go back to make sure I've got it from that kind of meeting that I'm in, and then be able to plan the next steps.
I completely agree. And when you then get into building bigger systems, so you're doing that on a personal level and a meeting, and that works really well. What we have been working a lot on internally is we then, all of those recordings or the transcripts then gets moved into a central repository for each client. So what it now means is that as far as an AI is concerned, we can now say, okay, I'm talking about this client, and the AI has access to all of the recordings of all of the meetings and all of the notes we have on different documents we've written about the client, and all the contracts and all of the tickets we have in our project management system. So all of a sudden we get this expert that knows about everything anybody has ever done or said or spoken to with this client about. And the AI can then find the relevant bits really fast and use that when we're asking it questions. And I find that's really powerful.
That's so powerful. Yeah. I think things like this that we never had before is like super valuable, isn't it? And I think even from, one, being able to look at everything, all the different conversations, but two, even when if you're hiring someone new, then being able to have all this information as well is incredible, isn't it? And I think we wouldn't have had this before, would we? No,
we couldn't. And that's where we would have relied on all of this verbal tradition and the explaining and the learning and all of that kind of stuff. And it just makes, but it's still about enabling the humans to do their job. But it just means you're not going to miss out on all of these bits, and you're not going to have that. It's the thing that always happens. You get somebody new on board and they start the work, and then they're about to make the same mistake we've made before because nobody, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose another question for you as both CTO and CISO, what risks should leaders be thinking about as AI accelerates without, I suppose, becoming paralyzed? Is there anything that you would advise businesses to be thinking about when it comes to security? Because obviously it's great for opportunity, creativity, and all these other things, but what are the risks involved?
I think the first thing and the most important thing is obviously the data security. And I think especially this is where the shadow IT comes in. If you're not driving it, if you're not giving your people the tools and guardrails, they're going to use AI anyway.
Yeah,
But they're
yeah.
probably going to go and use ChatGPT on the web or something like that. And the problem with that is that if you're putting something into most of the web front ends or front of AIs, then that data becomes part of their training set, which in other words is the same as you posting it on the internet publicly. So, and that is and that's happened multiple times where you get really quite confidential data being put into these web front ends, and that essentially makes that data public.
Yeah.
And that's really dangerous. And so being very careful, looking at all of the AI tools that you're looking at, telling your team which tools they can use. And if it's free, it's almost guaranteed that the data is going to be made public. Okay, so only use AI tools you pay for. And even then, read the terms for each one, right? That's really is the key.
Yeah, that's really good. Like you said, because they'll probably end up doing it anyway. Your employees will, if you're not equipping them with the tools to make their job easier.
They will, and they feel that, and quite rightly, they feel they're pushing things forward and they're doing the right thing. And I think the biggest risk are not from the bad guys in your company. The biggest risk are for the people who are actually deeply committed and caring and wanting to do the right thing. And they're wanting your organization to perform better. They're trying to push and say, guys, come on, let's do this. Let's be better. The problem is if you're not supporting those guys, they're going to do things that are really, really bad because they don't know any better. And you've got to address that.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose, has there been, and again, it's not something that, I suppose this is more your specialism, so you'll know more than me on this, but has there been any cases that you know of where?
Oh, yes.
And I suppose, so the things that maybe they could have prevented that would be using things like Copilot or paid for AI where the security is kind of locked in.
Yeah, 100%. It honestly, it happens all the time. There's been so many cases of proprietary confidential information being put in. There was one recently about NHS data being put into, some of these public, patient data, confidential patient data, because again, not maliciousness, just, hey, I can do better patient care by doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's confidential patient data.
Yeah. You just got to be so careful, haven't you? And I think, there's I suppose, like you say, it's people maybe who are curious, who want to do better, who want to help, and they're trying to do better in their role and go above and beyond, because they're like, actually, there's more that we can do here. But then at the same time, they're not realizing the risks involved. And
that's right. It's a little bit like the old analogy that used to be about guns and stuff. But if you have a swimming pool in your backyard, you can either teach your kids to swim, or you can tell them not to go near it, and then see which one is more likely to save their life, kind of thing. This is the same thing. AI is there, the tools are there. Telling your people not to use AI is never going to work. Being indifferent is even worse. Give them the tools, pay for it. Yes, I know it's going to add some money. It's going to take some money off your bottom line, but it's not that expensive. Just pay for it, because they're going to use it anyway, and they're going to use it badly, and then you're going to be in a lot more trouble.
Yeah. Have you seen any instances where it's been rolled out? Because I know I've heard of this a few times, but again, I'm not too in depth with that side of the business. Obviously, I'm doing more around the personal branding and like LinkedIn visibility. But have you seen instances where they've maybe rolled businesses or organizations have rolled Copilot out to some of their team, but not everyone?
Yeah, that's definitely a very common way of doing it. You do pilot projects, and it's a good idea. And Copilot incident, there's lots of other security issues with Copilot, for example, not because of Copilot, but one of the things, by the way, with Copilot specifically, because of the way it works, and from a security point of view, is you need to do a proper audit of your data. And let me just explain why. So with your emails and your SharePoint and all of that kind of stuff that you have in your organization. Now, one of the really powerful things about Copilot is it can access all of that data. Copilot is very good at making sure that if I don't have access to, say, a document on, say, SharePoint, even though Copilot might be able to see it, it won't show me that document, and it won't let me know anything about what's in that document. Now, so that's great. That works really well. However, a lot of organizations have not really thought about the security on SharePoint, and there will be sites that people actually technically can see, but they don't know they exist, so they don't go and find them. So, for example, it might be that I don't know, it might be that the payroll site has been set up, so actually the payroll site is readable by everybody, but it's hidden, so nobody knows it's there, so nobody goes and looks at it. But the problem is, once Copilot starts looking at it, and you start asking Copilot about, I don't know, what's an average salary in the company, it'll go and say, oh, you have access to the payroll site. Here you go. Here's all of the salary information.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot. So that's where you've got to be quite careful to make sure that's tidied up before you roll it out.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really good pointer as well. And I suppose it's kind of understanding it, but also bringing it into the company, making sure that it works for you as well, and you've got the kind of things in place that make it work.
And can I just say specifically about things like Copilot and the other AI assistants that are out there? I was listening to something really interesting the other day that really made it click in my head where the problem is, because it turns out that when you roll it out, Copilot to large cohorts, about 80% of people end up not using it very much. And that's an interesting statistic. So Microsoft did a lot of research on it.
That's a lot of people. That's a big percentage, isn't it?
Yeah, especially considering you're paying like 20 quid a head, right?
Yeah.
So, but the key takeaway from this big Microsoft survey they did internally on this, Microsoft had literally this problem internally in their technology company. And it turns out it's because a lot of the focus on AI training and Copilot training is how do you write a good prompt and how do you do the technical bits. But it turns out the predictor of who's going to be good at it is who's good at management. And that's because to make use of things like Copilot on that sort of personal level, what you have to do is be able to clearly explain the work you need doing. You need to be able to clearly break it down into individual tasks. You need to clearly understand which ones can I give to somebody else, which ones do I have to do myself. If you can do that, you can use Copilot really effectively. And that's management skills.
Yeah. And maybe even getting some of the quick wins from it as well, because once you start getting those quick wins of like, oh, this is so good, or this is really helpful, that's saving me so much time, or that's really helped. So I think then maybe they start to realize it's not as scary as it thinks, and actually it's here to help.
And it's funny, I actually find myself when I'm writing detailed instructions to an AI to do a bigger job, I'm actually in my head, I'm imagining delegating it to actual employees rather than the AI, because it's exactly the same thought process I have to go through. And that's why when you're rolling out Copilot, sort of that practical advice there is think less about teaching them the prompting techniques and stuff. Think more about teaching some basic management skills. That's really where it's going. And with AI agents in general, more and more of us knowledge workers' jobs is all sort of collapsing into being able to manage AI agents. In fact, just to put this into completely scary context, in the world of software development, the latest models now, or the latest tools out there, it's not just that we can have multiple agents all working in parallel, but the latest iterations now have AI team leaders. So as a developer now, you actually might have 3 or 4 AI team leaders, each of which is supervising a handful of agents. So you're not just managing like some AI developers, you're managing, like a whole hierarchy of AI developers. It's a completely different skill set, and
that's interesting.
Yeah.
I've had a note come through from Timothy Alcott. Would you say company handbook contract terms are the first place to start?
Handbook contract terms, did you say?
Yes. So, Timothy, if you want to expand on that, please do whilst we continue. But there's just a question that he's had.
I think writing a clear policy on what's allowed, whether that's in the handbook, but yes, definitely to write a very clear policy straight away on what AI is and isn't allowed. You should absolutely start there and roll that out straight away. Got to make it very clear that people can't just go and use ChatGPT on the web, that's completely forbidden, but also then what they can do.
Yeah, I think that's it, isn't it? It's almost like making sure that they know what they can't do, but also encouraging them to do things. And I see that even with what I do with like posting on LinkedIn. It's like we don't want to almost restrict them too much or put them off too much from doing it, but also some kind of guidelines around, don't do this, but we do want you to do this, and so do kind of post. But yeah, Timothy, is there anything else you wanted to ask on that? Then feel free to just pop a note in. So I have a little segment now called Brand Myth versus Brand Truth. So essentially, I'll give you a statement, and you tell me whether it's a myth or truth in your opinion and why.
Okay.
So first one is AI is a technology project, not a leadership responsibility. Is that a myth or a truth, and why?
Complete myth, because it's all about change and leadership. It's all about fundamentally rethinking how you run your business and how your business needs to operate.
Yeah, I thought you would say that. And the second one is strong security and rapid innovation can't coexist. Is that a myth or a truth, and why?
I think that's a myth, but security and convenience obviously are always at odds with each other. We know that. And if you want to stay secure, there are extra hurdles you have to jump. But I think in the last 10, 15 years, we have learned how to iterate on them together.
Yeah.
There was you go back 20 years, 15, 20 years, we invented this thing called the SDLC, which was all about big lumbering. You do this review, and then you do this, and then you do this. And we've all learned as an industry how not to do it that way. You can iterate much more quickly, but it boils down to, we could do a whole podcast on that, but it boils down to really good risk assessment and risk management. And the key thing is, when it comes to embedding security in a rapid evolution process, is to knowing exactly when to stop and do the 1 minute assessment of risk, and then take actions from that. If you can do that, then you can make it work fast together.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the last one is, if we're profitable today, we can afford to wait on AI. Is that a myth or a truth, and why?
I think that depends on who you are. I think there's a lot of industries where that's definitely a myth. There's also others that is where it's true. I think if you're not sure, I would say go on the assumption it's a myth, and then you have to get on with it.
Yeah. And I suppose even if you are profitable, there may be other ways that you can be even more profitable, or you can do something even better.
Yeah, and I would say one thing I have seen too many times in my career is, because apart from developing software systems, so it's slight tangent, but I think it's relevant. What we also often get asked to do is to come in and assess people's existing businesses, especially software businesses. And so many times I've seen businesses that were profitable, and then they've started gradually declining because they weren't innovating. By the time they realize they're not innovating, it's too late. Their cash flow has dwindled so much they can no longer afford to do the investment they need to innovate. So if you have cash flow today, if you have profits today, please go and spend some of that money innovating. Don't wait until you don't have profits, because then you can't afford it.
Yeah, because your competitors are kind of now outshining you because they're using AI and they're kind of being smart. And I suppose it's just a question that I just thought of. When it comes to, I don't know, I get, when I'm in kind of conversations like this, it comes up quite a lot, but around AI taking people's job roles. Have you seen that, or do you think that that's a risk, and kind of what kind of roles would you see it taking, and what can people do to make sure that they protect their role as well?
I think that's a huge question. Now, I've thought about this a lot, as you can probably imagine. I'll try and keep it relatively brief, right? But there's 3 things I'm going to say. So stop me if I go on for long.
Yeah,
the first thing,
okay.
I have an assumption, I'm just going to say, and if that assumption is wrong, then everything I'm about to say is wrong. Okay. My assumption, what I think is that the AI LLM models, I think, are at the top of the S curve at the moment. I think we have pretty much petering out in terms of what the models can be done to make better, based on that technological breakthrough in 2018 at Google, right? So that's my key assumption. Now, that said, that doesn't mean that there isn't. I think the impact on society has only just started. We're only doing the smallest bit yet, and there's a lot of stuff around the AI models that is going to keep growing. That said, now the second thing is, I've studied economy back in the day. So with an economist hat on, we've always had changes in society and technology, right? So the most obvious example is, it used to be that what an economist would call the primary economy, which is getting stuff out of the ground, like so farming and mining. It's like 90+% of the entire economy. Now it's 8%.
Wow.
So yeah, and I know, right? So what are we doing? 80% of the economy is what we call the tertiary economy, which is basically cutting each other's hair and doing what I do. That's all tertiary. So we have managed these shifts, okay? So but an economist always thinks in the long term, and the problem is there's usually 20 or 30 or 40 years of absolute mayhem in those shifts. So there's definitely shift. So that was my second point. The third point, sorry, and this is important even in the short term. I came across something over Christmas, and that finally started to help me make sense of this. There's something called Jevons paradox, and it goes back to coal back in the day. It's really old, but it's really interesting. So there was an invention a couple of 100 years ago that made it much more efficient to burn coal. So if you had a coal fire, you could get much more heat out of the same amount of coal. So the assumption was, well, that's going to mean that the use of coal is going to go down.
Yeah.
But the opposite happened. The use of coal went up. And the reason is that there was a lot of cases where it wasn't economical to use coal because it was too expensive, given how inefficient it was. By making it more efficient, it became cheaper to use it, and therefore you could use it in many more use cases. Therefore, demand actually exploded. And I think we're seeing the same thing, especially in my industry, software development, because there might be a project that a few years ago, a client would have said, I want to automate this. And I would say, it's going to cost £500,000 to do. And they would say, well, it's only going to make me 100 grand. I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Now, with AI, both development and other things, I can probably say I could do it for 50 or 100K. And it changes the conversation. And I think that's true in a lot of cases. Not everywhere. Certain things are fixed and you only need a certain amount. But there's a lot where there's room for a lot of demand expansion. And I think that's going to happen a lot. So I think it's uneven. There's some areas, jobs are just going to disappear. Others, I actually think demand is going to go up.
Yeah, no, that's a really good perspective, and I suppose an insight to it, and I suppose if you're good at your job, you're always kind of curious and kind of trying to, learn and use the different tools that are available. There will be a role for you available. It's just, I think also, from my opinion, it's about who can adapt the best and who can, move with the times the best as well.
I think the biggest problems are juniors, and that's a problem. So legal and development and stuff and accountancy, we're all figuring out that AI can do the junior staff's job better than they can. And I think as just general industries, we have a problem that how are we going to train the next seniors if we don't take in juniors?
Yeah.
And I don't know the answer to that one. I think as a young person today, trying to get into these industries is really hard because the skills you need to use an AI effectively to do a lot of these jobs is experience, seniority, management skills. But if you're 20 years old, fresh out of uni, you don't have those yet. And I think they're going to be hurt a lot by this. And I don't have an answer to that one.
Yeah, no, I get that. And I think, I suppose that will come only with time and I suppose learnings as well. Mm-hmm. So my final question for you today is if you could go back and speak to your younger self at the very start of your career, what would you tell him now and what advice would you give him?
Nothing to do with AI. I would say I'd say you won't believe me, but the most important thing is emotions and human relationships. So I'm on the autistic spectrum, and I remember for the first 30 odd years of my life, I thought everything was just a matter of applying the right logic. It turns out all decisions that I ever made are made based on emotion, not on logic. I mean, logic helps, but ultimately it's emotional. Human relationships is what makes everything work. And if I had to go back to my 20-year-old self, it would be work much more on understanding humans and understanding human relationships rather than just focusing on logic.
I love that. And I think that's a really, really great point there. And I think humans we all are interacting with each other, aren't we? And I think whether it's business or personal, it is understanding people and emotions and kind of gut feel, that all those things are huge, aren't they? And we can use these different tools that are available to help us, but ultimately the human element is so fundamental.
100%. And that's the biggest learn I've had. So it took me a long time to figure it out.
Well, it's been amazing to have you on, Frans. Thank you so much. It was really, really helpful, and I hope everyone that does listen will get a lot of value from it. And I will be sharing other things over the coming weeks from this podcast. So thank you so much. If people want to connect with you or learn more about what you do, where's the best place to find you for people to reach out?
So there's two places. One is just our company website, neworbit.co.uk. You can reach me through that. Or ping me on LinkedIn. So I'm Flytzen, Flytzen. So you can find me. I don't think there's anybody else with my name, so you won't go wrong.
Yeah, that's always good and handy, and I will tag you in this as well so people can see, and I'll tag you in the clips that come out as well. So thank you so much. That's been really valuable for me, and I'm sure it will be for everyone else that does listen as well.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure speaking to you today.
Thank you so much, Frans. And thank you everyone who's tuned in, and I'll see you next time for Brandon Becoming. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.